Hello, Charlie.
Oh, hi, Freddy. Thanks so much for doing this. And
oh, sure.
Where are you? You're in Maine, aren't you?
I'm in Maine. Yeah.
Where about?
Portland. I can see you from here, actually. Yeah, I can see the Atlantic from here, actually. Yeah, long way from home.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that you were over here recently, weren't you? In May. Was it?
I still get to take tours around and show people all the places and the sacred sites and things. So at least I get a chance to have a few pints.
Yeah.
Murder some fish and chips and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The one that you mentioned quite a lot.
I started asking Freddie about crop circles,
the three circles in a triangle with a slight crook in one side.
Oh, the Barbary Castle tetrahedron. Yeah, well, that's a classic. Well, that was back in the days when there was no hoaxing. No. It's been a bit confused since 2003. It's been nothing but hoaxing since 2003. Very, very few real ones.
Really?
So this is why I like to set the story straight. Yes. I mean, someone actually made a very prophetic opinion about the day my book came out in 2002. They said, the day this comes out, the hoaxing is going to get a lot better, and it did, because they suddenly realized something called harmonics. And it's to do with the way the visual, because it's not about the visual, it's about what's inside it, but the visual is what gets your attention. Yeah. And they didn't understand harmonics, and once they understood the concept of harmonics, the designs got a lot better. So from the air, they began to feel like the real thing, but then you have to go on the ground, look at the actual work, see what's happened to the plants, and of course they're fake. And it takes a trained eye to look at that kind of thing. But it's funny because as soon as the information is published, and I mean, there's a lot of information, it's not been improved since then, which is really weird. Mm-hmm. It's as though the conversation has pretty much come to a close. There'll be like one or two real ones every year in England, simple ones. They don't attract attention. Yeah. But we knew 15 years ago, 20 years ago now, that once they stopped happening in Britain, they'll move to America, and they've been hanging around the Serpent Mound in Ohio, where ironically the only last surviving bona fide researcher is still active, and he's one of the few people that actually calls a spade, and that's why I call him a bona fide researcher. Mm-hmm. Someone who diligently does the work, and he'll say, this is real, that isn't, and that I don't know. And that's the way you do it. You have to be very honest about this. And they're still happening in the prairie of North America as well. So they seem to go where they're wanted and where there's less sort of superficial attention gained on them. Because it's like a religion, as you probably know over there. There's so much gargling about backwards and forwards, and people that eat at each other's throats. It's a very polarizing subject, and that's an energy that we now know can be measured. I mean, emotions are energy, thoughts are energy. Yeah. That goes into an energy form which is very pure. It begins to corrupt the actual energy of this thing, because ultimately that's what they are. They're messages, they're thought forms, and if you pollute that, then the actual message starts getting corrupted. So no wonder that the conversation moves somewhere else. That's not to say that the phenomenon is devalued in any way. It's still the most important phenomenon there is, and sometimes people will actually make a hoax where there used to be a real design, and people go in there and they'll pick up the tingly-winglies, and they'll say, "Oh, I just had this experience." I said, well, yeah, but what you went into is man-made, but what you're picking up is the energy of the original design, which is real, and it was there 6 years ago, and you can still pick it up. Yeah. So there is a bit of value, despite the criminal activity that goes on. And a lot of the farmers are in on this. They're making a lot of money on this. They know that they give permission to people to go and make a design, and they claim the whole thing is real. There's an honesty box that gets put out. It goes to pay for a new roof or improving a local road, and that's nice. But there's a bit of deceit going on. That's why large groups of people are going out in the middle of the night making something very coherent, because they have permission, and they have immunity from prosecution from the actual farmer. Mm-hmm. So that's how they're getting better and more complex. But
because they have more time, because they know they're not going to be disturbed or chased off the land.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there was the one with the alien head years ago. I can't remember, about 10 years ago, famous. It was holding a big disc. Yeah. It got all the attention. Meanwhile, there's a real one happening 10 miles away. No one goes to that one. Yeah. But they want to go and see this. It's amazing. I know who did it. I mean, they're actually paid for by MI5. We know this. It's on record. Yeah. They even have an apartment somewhere somewhere in South London, which I can't mention where, which is actually paid for by MI5. This is an actual group of hoaxers paid for by your taxpayer money and my taxpayer money.
Yes, which is the whole Doug and Day thing, which we won't go into because it's well-trodden path, literally. But it's all that, and if people want to kind of find out more about it, but that was totally discredited.
It's worth knowing.
Yeah, I mean, so when you return to England now and you do a crop circle tour, I mean, did you find on this last trip in May? Were you there for the conference? Weren't you? Were you there also for any crop circles?
I'm banned from the conferences.
There was a conference there. Weren't you attending there?
No, I'm banned from those. I know the people that organise them, they hate my guts, and I'm not particularly fond of them either, because I'm bad for business. I will go there and tell the truth. I'll give you the evidence, and the evidence shows that most of the stuff today is man-made. Yeah. So why am I promoting a fake subject when there's very important things to talk about back in the old days? Now, as humans, we put a timeline on things. Yeah. What happened last year is last year. Yeah. I want to know what's happening now, but that's not how it works. Yeah. Information is still important. It's like saying a book by Plato is now out of date because it was written 17 centuries ago. That's not how it works. So I'm bad for business in that respect, and they are treating it as a business, and they pose themselves as researchers when they're not. Yeah. It's just business. That's not what I'm in this for. It's about promoting an idea, an extraordinary concept, and a very important message. So that's why I'm banned from these tours, you see.
I understand. Well,
slightly political.
Well, no. I thank God you're doing that, because there has to be discernment, and I understand when something like this comes about, and people can almost project or give over themselves too much of themselves in a way, and therefore when there is any criticism that comes in for any crop circle, whatever, it's devastating for people, isn't it? To actually acknowledge that they've given so much of themselves into it. That I suppose the crop circle is quite interesting that way, isn't it? Because something that's very kind of pure can mirror our kind of worst aspects of ourselves. Really. Yeah. It creates this kind of
Actually, I've learned more about human nature by studying crop circles than anything else, and it really is. It's a good subject if you want to try and destroy your ego, and it's a good thing because it helps you to face yourself and recognize that you're not right all the time. Yeah. And if you just get yourself over that process, the fringe benefits are extraordinary. I mean, I'm a better person because of this. Yes.
Having gone through that painful kind of step yourself,
absolutely.
When you had to confront it, it must have been quite painful to go,
absolutely.
Hand on heart, I can't say this is real. I'm not going to, I'm not going to promote it. I just, can't do it.
But I think that's also hardwired in the individual as well. I mean, people can change, but that's also hardwired in people. If they're, if they're out to be narcissists, then there's no way you can shape that. But the point is, I mean, for example, in the early days when I was still learning the ropes and I would accept that everything was real, then we'd get information saying, well, actually, that was made by people. And I go, well, that's interesting. Okay, now I understand why. I can tell the difference between that and that. Yes. Well, that's useful. And that's when I realised, okay, this is not really about me. It's about something bigger. And same with dowsing.
Yeah.
First few years of dowsing, when I was first learning the art of doing this with the coat hangers, and I had the wonderful opportunity to learn from two of the world's best, two who now passed away, unfortunately, Richard Andrews and Hamish Miller, two of the best British dowsers ever. And I thought I was doing the right thing until they began to show me, well, actually, no, that's coming from your self. You want so much to believe this is real, you're getting the results. I had to throw 2 years worth of work away and start from scratch.
And get out your own way, basically.
Yeah, you just say, no, I'm sorry, that's coming from my ego, not coming from the crop circle. I've got to start again. Yeah. And it's hurtful because, you spend so much time into this, but at the end of it, if you can just get over yourself, it really helps you, and you actually make a much better connection with the origin of the crop circles, and you begin to communicate with it, and then all kinds of magic starts to happen.
Because it's authentic.
Exactly.
Authenticity's gone through. You've almost had to go through this, almost a kind of initiation too, isn't it, to actually go through it and come out the other side.
And it's funny how much the crop circles mimic and mirror ancient sacred sites, which is, again, another reason why wherever they appear, they're always appearing next to ancient sacred sites, even in North America, where I'm calling from. that wherever they appear, they're rare, but they're always next to ancient sacred sites, and that's the connection. They want us to see the connection. And once you recognize there's an initiatic process going on here of opening the self to another level of reality, that's what they were doing 5,000 years ago in the mystery schools of China and Persia and Polynesia and the southwest United States and all up and down the Americas. It's the same concept.
Absolutely. Oh, so are we talking about what, sort of 10% or 20% of the crop circles now appearing in the field to be genuine every year? Or
I'd say about 1%.
About 1%, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very...
So
maybe one a summer, basically, yeah?
Basically, and usually don't pay attention to them because they're the very simple ones.
Yeah.
Because it's like a conversation. If you see the whole thing as a conversation that developed over time, and you've got to go back to the early 70s to see where the conversation kind of begins, although they have been appearing sporadically through history.
Colin Andrews, who initially coined the phrase crop circle, was it?
I think it was actually Pat Delgado.
Oh, okay.
It was one of the two. I think it was Pat actually. Yeah. It was corn circle originally, which really confuses our American friends.
Yeah.
But it starts an appearing corn. Yeah, but in Britain it's called corn. Never mind.
Yeah.
He coined the phrase. But I mean, we began to realize that there was a certain communication because so many of the early symbols could be actually deciphered by indigenous cultures.
Yeah.
And to this day, they're still very emotional about the symbols. And for them, it's like, oh, this is nothing new. This is the return of the star people. They've always been coming and going, but we didn't realize they were actually here and doing this. Wow. So they saw the whole thing as a matter of fact. That's when we began to realize we've been given a conversation.
Yeah.
Once we made that leap, suddenly the designs the following year became more complex. So we're going from lesson to lesson each year.
Yeah.
And it was magical. And then, of course, at the end, we finally realized, oh, that's how they're made. That's what the connection is. Let's put this on paper and print it.
Yeah.
And then the conversation kind of stops or gets fine-tuned and then disappears.
Yeah.
So that's how the whole thing really began and developed.
You were there.
Just like having a conversation. About an hour from now, we'll click Skype and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, you were there to kind of golden period, though, weren't you? I mean, just to give a bit of background to some of the the viewers or listeners. I mean, you were working in the advertising business in Chicago, weren't you? And actually made that transition, which was, I mean, we're very glad you did because.
So am I, to be honest.
This created this incredible body of work that you've now produced. What, over 20 years later?
Thank you. I lost a lot of hair because of it. And you know what? Someone actually asked me, so what's the connection? I said, well, I actually don't know. And they said, well, think about what you did at work. And I thought, well, I sit at the desk and I get a big stack of papers and from the marketing department, and I have to translate that into a simple symbol that I can sell to a skeptical public. That's what advertising really is.
Yeah.
It's a condensing of massive information. You put up a poster with a visual and a headline, and that's your symbol, and you communicate with people. Yeah. And now what I was doing is I was taking a symbol and I was extracting a ton of information that I still had to sell to a skeptical public. Yeah. So in a way, it's a bit of a personal joke, but it helped me actually really sell the subject because I come from that background. I can understand the connections that are made. I can see things which don't seem to be immediately related and go, that connects to that. Oh, that's a great message. And then be able to put that in a way that I can appeal it to people. And that's what really helped me. I didn't realize at the time. So someone must have had my number somewhere.
It all makes sense. It all makes sense. Obviously, looking back, I mean, that was a self-defining moment. It must have been in Chicago when you sort of thought, well, I'm going to pack this in and go back to England and and look into this.
There's been a lot of sacrifice. I'm not the only one. I mean, we've all lost our wives, we've lost houses, we've lost our income, our life savings, everything. Yeah. It's a leap of faith. It's a huge leap of faith. Yeah. I'd do it again because it was so much fun, but also because if anybody cares to actually look into the message of why these things are here and right now, it's a very important message.
Yes.
It's a regurgitated message because we seem as a human society to always find a way to mess things up for ourselves. Yeah. In fact, someone said to me as a joke that there's only two mammals in the world that are known for fouling their own nests. It's seagulls and humans. And we get the information, we have the books, we have the temples, and we go for a golden period in our history, and then we still manage to mess it up. And someone from somewhere else has to say, look, you're getting it wrong. Remind yourselves of why you're here, remind yourselves of the purpose of the big picture of the cosmos and your place in it, and learn to understand yourselves and how you relate to the earth. It's a very New Age Buddhist concept, but it's still so true today. We just have to get our cynical minds around this and accept that actually there's nothing wrong with New Age messages or Buddhist messages, because you know what? People thousands of years ago used those to actually better themselves and create societies that last longer than 2 decades, which we can't do today. I mean, you know, China's already come and gone as an empire. That lasted within our lifetime. All the big empires have all gone, and we begin to realize that beating the other guy with the big stick doesn't work. So that's the ultimate message, and I thought that was a very important thing to communicate to people.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you also, Freddie, is that you had some pretty profound experiences too. I mean, one or two, and I mean, would you mind sharing? You know, what one of your first? I mean, you know, very, very powerful when you first. I don't know whether it was the first time you were in a crop circle, but it was one particular time.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because I mean, I was still living back in the States at the time, and I'd be going backwards and forwards. I still had to pay the bills, and I'd use every summer possible to get on with the research, because you have to go actually in the field and talk to people and look at things and hold the plants and the soil. But somehow I'd always seen these things from afar. And then one day I actually got hold of Colin Andrews and I said, look, I think there's a heat signature in these things, and as a photographer I can actually prove that with infrared photography. And he says, well, that'll be useful. And that's how our friendship was struck. And it's kind of funny, because he actually took me to the first crop circle I actually went directly into with permission from the farmer, which you should do. And I was really disappointed. And he looks at me and he didn't say anything. And I was going, that's not like all the others. This is not what I'm expecting. And I was really puzzled by it. And he goes, well, just do what you do. I'll fill you in later. There's another one that just appeared. Okay. Well, it turns out that he had that one specially man-made just for me, just to figure out if I was kosher or not. And we went to the next one, and I remember just getting out of the car. It was on the side of a hill. You can barely see it. And it's like someone just took a big hand and went smack right in the side of the, put me on the side of the car. And I was like glue there. And Colin was walking away, turns around and says, are you coming? I said, wow, this is unbelievable. It's like this big ball of energy is just sucking me right in. I got no words to describe it. And it was like walking on air. And it was night and day. This one's the real thing. I remember getting to the edge of it, and you get, all your electrical systems in your body are all in your fingertips. So if you go for a rarefied magnetic field, you'll get what we call, in very technical terms, the tingly-winglies. And you go through the perimeter of the circle, and you can feel this tingle going on. It's like, wow, that's amazing. But you can see the actual lay of the plants. They're floating about this much off the ground. So if you try to put a garden roller there, and they do use garden rollers to make them sometimes, or a plank of wood, you'd flatten all of that. You'd crease it, you'd cut the plants. This is beautifully curved, and you could see the flow, almost like everything was arranged in this beautiful museum display case, flowing like a river in beautiful, almost a spiral motion, like a river of wheat. Actually, that was barley. And I felt so bad about actually stepping on it, because it was so pristine, so undamaged. I had to take my boots off and walk barefoot, and you can hear the sound getting crushed from under you. And it's like, because these things we now know have an electromagnetic frequency, which that's allied with your brainwaves. So you are slightly out of body. It's like being high on mushrooms or something. You can't actually think very well inside real ones. You have to actually get out, take your thoughts, and then write things down, because you literally are being taken slightly out of body. Kind of like being in a pyramid. It's the same concept. And you're just walking around, and you can hear things with your peripheral hearing, like someone's whispering to you, and vision is becoming a bit more cloudy and unusual. You start seeing flashes around you. It's like you're inside this big tube that's connected to a bigger picture. It's magical. It's absolutely magical. But I get the same thing now from going to sacred sites as well, to pyramids and old temples. It's the same thing. The crop circles are using the same technique as the old temples, and that's the connection.
Yeah, and that's great. And did you get a sense of a sort of consciousness there, a presence at all?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like you always, and everybody that was doing the research said the same thing, that we feel like we're being watched all the time, which is kind of a precursor to where we ended up going with the research, and we found out who was actually behind this. But they all said the same thing. And in fact, I remember the early days of the research when you actually go and have an aha moment, and you go, oh, I know exactly what that is. I got it. And I can back that up with science, because that was the important part, backing it up with real things. Yeah. And I thought, well, if that's correct, then if we now have a piece of evidence in the crop circle that shows us B, that will prove that A actually is correct. And the next day, B would show up within a mile of your house, and you go, my God, who's listening in on my thoughts? Someone's actually reading my mind and giving me the information, because as soon as I figured out the answer, the next problem presents itself and advances our understanding.
So it feels very benign and quite humorous in a way. So did you find it,
I mean, they have a mischievous sense of humour. Really? They really do. Yeah. I remember one time we worked with a good friend of mine, actually. She's one of the world's best psychics. She's a trance medium. The police in England use her regularly, and I can't say more than that because they hate me saying that, because they don't want the public to know that the police use a psychic to sort out their worst problems. Yeah. And she's 100% right all the time. Even the military hang out with her as well to get some kind of idea and things. So she's very self-effacing. Mm-hmm. And we had it on good account that there was a crop circle going to be appearing near the Avebury Stone Circle one evening. We thought, great, we'll go at a vantage point, put ourselves on these mounds, and take some flasks of brandy to keep the the coldness of the air out, fleecy blankets, night vision goggles. We were ready. Anyway, 2 a.m, nothing's happening, and we're getting a bit impatient. And I was still kind of learning the craft of it back then. I didn't know as much as I do now. Certainly didn't know the relationship between the mounds and the Earth's energy lines either. And we were sitting on these mounds where nobody's buried, by the way. And we're looking at the Avebury Avenue, and nothing's happening. And I closed my eyes for a second, and it's like this tube of light just kept coming straight into my forehead, and I can still see these geometrical shapes, like neon signs going straight into my forehead. And I just woke up, and I thought, what the hell was that? And a friend of mine who was actually a very good teacher, she says, are you okay? I said, I'm not sure. I'm just going to get a little bit of sleep because it's 2 a.m. Okay. And I closed my eyes, same thing happened, and then I went, whoa, okay, what's going on here? And she says to me, are you getting the tube of light going into the forehead with a jump? Did that happen to you as well? Oh, it happens to everybody. Well, we're sitting right here on the tumuli, and they're marking the Earth's energy lines that are connecting into Avebury, and between 2 and 4 a.m, the Earth's magnetic field recharges. Uh-huh. That's how nature connects and communicates with itself, and they're now communicating with you. They're probably downloading information. You know what? Next day I was writing like crazy. I don't know where this stuff was coming from. It was like magic.
And was that started what was going to become your book?
That's eventually what became the book. Really? I had no intention of writing a book ever. That's the fun. Secrets in the Fields.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Cool. But the funny thing is, at 5 a.m, light starts popping up, and we go, well, whoever gave us the information about this crop circle appearing is completely wrong. There's nothing there. We packed up, turned around, it happened behind us.
That's the humour. That's the humour as well, isn't it?
They didn't tell you which direction to look at. They've done this every single time. We would get to the point in 1999 where we could predict where the big one would be. And I had an experiment that was done through several people, some in England, some in America, and they're all from different walks of life. There was a lawyer, a writer, an editor, 2 psychics, a computer expert, myself using dowsing, just my God-given intuitive ability. And the idea was, without telling anyone, I want you to tell me where the big one of 1999 is going to be, given the whole of the British Isles. Yeah. What it's going to look like in terms of geometry and also timing. And timing is always an issue because timing is an Earth-related thing. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the universe. That's always been the Achilles heel. Anyway, all of these people, 7 of them, all came up with exactly the same thing. It's going to be near the visors. It's going to be it's like a 7-pointed geometry with a 9-pointed geometry encoded in it, and they were very unclear about it. And it's going to happen within this window of 3 days. And these are 7 people who had no idea that I was talking to the other 6. Yeah. And they gave me virtually the same information. Well, would you believe we actually able to predict it to the actual day when it was going to happen? And we were ready to go out in the evening. It was 11:30 at night. We're sitting in my living room, and it was as though someone just put a canister of sleeping gas into the room. No one was able to get up, and I'm sitting there going, I need to get into a car and leave. And just bang, collapsed. Next thing I remember, it's 7 a.m. I woke up, there's people lying all over the floor. I'm going, oh my God, we've missed it. I told my pilot 3 days earlier to get the plane ready, and I didn't tell him where we're going to go. So I raced like a crazy person back up to the airfield, and it was foggy, and I said, we're going to go to these coordinates, but I think we've missed it. And he said, takes off his helmet, he says, save your money, it's expensive. I know. It's foggy. I was the last person to fly over that field last night. There's no way anyone's going to make a crop circle in that short space of time in fog. I said, trust me, just go there. So we did. We're flying around at this place called Oliver's Castle, which then became the site for a very notorious video. And we're circling around. The fog isn't clearing. Fourth time around, the fog clears, and it's right there in the field, exactly where 7 people said it would be, exactly on that day, exactly the same geometry. And all I remember was in my headphone was the pilot. Can I swear on there?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
All I heard was, fucking hell! How did you know? I said, you don't want to know.
Yeah.
And he became a convert as well. He realized that there's no way you can make that stuff up.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most powerful things that we'd ever recorded, that was ever laid down. And we were told, do not go in there, because this is one of the strongest things we've ever laid down. It's not meant for people, it's meant for the earth. Right. Because there are crop circles that are meant for people to wake them up. Some are meant for the earth. You're not supposed to go in there. But of course, as a researcher, I have to, even if it's just for 10 minutes, to register it, photograph it, make a mental note, okay, got it. I was sick for 48 hours after that. It drained 16 packs of batteries just on the outside of the circle. That's how powerful it was, and it really interferes with your electromagnetic body after that. But it can be dangerous if you're not following your attention. But that's the magic of it, you know. There was
Absolutely. And were balls of light present? I mean, I know that's a slightly separate thing, but was that part of that?
No, these balls of light, actually, no one's ever seen the balls of light actually make the crop circle. They seem to be always in the vicinity, before or after. Yeah. And what I've come to understand them as, they're like forms of consciousness, like you and I. I mean, we're in a very physical, material world. If we look at other forms of consciousness, they're very much real on their level of reality as we are on ours. But because of the frequency, you know, we at 88 FM can't really switch up our dial to 90 FM because we'd basically blow ourselves up. Yeah. But for them, they can set down their frequency a little bit so that it becomes visible on our level of reality. But of course, we can only see them as light. Yeah. That's the highest spectrum that we can possibly conceive with our apparatus. Yeah. So they apparently, from what I now understand, they are forms of, you know, entities, spirit forms, whatever you want to call them, floating around using the energy lines to go from A to B, by the way, which the military knows all about because they're following the same lines too when I see them in the fields in Wiltshire, following the balls of light in bright daylight. So they have a mechanism which to track the energy lines, and NASA does too. They're actually on record. They have found a way to actually figure out what the energy lines are. So these balls of light, they are related. They're forms of consciousness, and they are even more mischievous than the circle makers. They appear and reappear. In fact, there was one famous case where actually in Wiltshire, middle of the afternoon on Adam's grave, watching a silver sphere about so big floating in front of us, and we went, wow, I'm glad I got my camera here. That's amazing. They usually look like they're brightly coloured at night, but in the day they take on the form of a silver sphere. And there's a black military helicopter behind it. I swear they exist. I really do swear they exist. I thought people were making this stuff up. And it was chasing it, and it stops. And the moment we looked at it, it stops, like it reacted to our thoughts. Yeah. And I wondered, I wonder if we can communicate. I wonder if I can get it to go to the left or to the right. They're actually able to read your thoughts and they react before you've actually said anything. And I thought, this is wonderful. And then the helicopter's trying to figure out what to do. And we kind of got this idea that, watch this, watch what I'm about to do. And I thought, did I just hear that? And it disappeared. It reappears behind the helicopter, and the helicopter turns around. And then it disappears, and it goes under the helicopter. And the helicopter's going, where the hell did that thing go? I mean, it was hysterical watching this. We're laughing, we're videoing this. Yeah. And then it says, I hope that was fun. And then it kind of sits there, it shakes, and it goes, woof. Now that, I'd like to have a car that can accelerate that fast, and the helicopter sits there like, no, I can't do that. And it just sulks all the way back to the military base, which I believe was somewhere on Salisbury Plain. I don't remember where it is. And it was the funniest thing. So we went down to the bottom of the hill, because I know the guy that lives there. I said, we better get this, make a copy of it very, very quickly. I've got a bad feeling about this. 15 minutes, we'd made the copy, and we were watching it on television, plugged in the camcorder back in those days in the television, knock on the door, Her Majesty's Constabulary knocking on the door, very politely saying, we're not here, just give us the tape, don't ask questions. And I said, absolutely, nice of you to be so polite. Just, we're not here, this conversation isn't taking place. They're almost laughing, it's like, this is so farcical. And I said, how did you find it? Don't ask, you don't want to know. Okay. So we gave him the tape, and you haven't made any copies, right? Absolutely. Anyway, a copy of that video eventually came up in an old video. If anybody's younger than 30, you'll have to Google video. A videotape called Crop Circle Communique, and that's the only place where you'll find it. But it's a true story.
Wow, that's